Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something completely real today, something a lot of people do not want to hear or accept. You think just because he is quiet, or just because you are not currently talking, that he is not thinking about you. But you are still on his mind whether he sends a text, makes a call, or even breathes near you or not. That is the absolute truth. You see, men do not always act directly on their thoughts. Sometimes they just sit there quietly, replaying moments in their head, wondering why things happened the way they did, and yes, thinking deeply about you. Ladies and gentlemen, let me get straight to the point with you. Far too many people, especially women, believe that if a man isn't talking, texting, or reaching out, he has totally forgotten about you. Let me tell you something right now. Absence does not equal forgetting. Do you hear me? Just because he is not standing in front of your face every single day, and just because the phone is quiet, that does not mean your name isn't running through his mind constantly. You see, men do not always operate the same way women do. Women like to talk, share, express, and get immediate proof of contact. Men think and process their feelings differently. A man thinking about you does not always translate into him picking up a phone to send a message. Sometimes just thinking is all he needs to do in that moment. Here is the thing about men that you need to know. They are visual, emotional, and reflective, whether they choose to show it on the outside or not. When a man spends quality time with a woman, connects with her, and feels a true spark, it creates a lasting imprint in his mind. That imprint does not simply vanish just because there is physical distance between you two. It lingers around for a long time. Have you ever noticed how some men will suddenly remember a small moment you shared together completely out of nowhere? That is not a random coincidence. That is his mind actively replaying the special moments you shared. And sometimes he does this far more often than you could ever imagine. This next part is extremely important to understand. Women often assume that because he hasn't called, he simply does not care. That is completely wrong. He is caring in his own unique way. Sometimes he cares through silence, quiet thought, and deep reflection. He carries that memory of you inside his mind, letting it grow, sit, and really sink in. When the timing feels right to him, he will take action. Let me tell you something else. Men have a habit of underestimating the true power of absence. They think if you are not physically around, you will be out of sight and out of mind. But I am here to tell you that this is rarely how it actually works. Men may go about their daily routines, focus on work, manage their responsibilities, and handle life, but a genuine part of them is still constantly thinking about you. That hidden part of his mind is replaying your old conversations, recalling the shared laughter, and remembering the exact moments that made him feel alive. He thinks about how you looked at him and how you carried yourself with confidence. Even the tiny little quirks you never noticed about yourself, he definitely noticed them. When you are no longer right there beside him, those small things become amplified in his mind. They take up far more space because absence gives those memories room to expand and grow stronger. Let me break this down even further so it makes complete sense. You have probably heard the old saying that you do not know what you have until it is gone. That statement is very real, and it applies directly to this situation. When a woman steps back and gives proper space, that absence triggers a powerful shift in a man's mind. It forces him to sit back and reflect. It forces him to consider what he truly values, what he is currently missing out on, and what he ultimately does not want to lose. Women sometimes mistakenly believe that giving space means they are actively pushing a man away, but that is not true at all. Giving space is actually giving him the chance to recognize your real worth. It allows him to sit quietly with his thoughts about you and understand just how much you actually mean to his life. Men genuinely need that kind of time. They need proper room to think, room to feel, and room to process their emotions. That is exactly why absence never means forgetting. It actually means the exact opposite. It means your presence is sinking deeper into his heart, even if he is not actively reaching out to you at this very moment. Now, ladies, I need you to understand another key point about absence and memory. When you are not in constant daily contact, the moments you did share start to feel significantly more valuable in his mind. The way you laughed at things, the soft way you spoke, and the small gestures he might have taken for granted before all get magnified. That beautiful smile of yours starts playing on repeat inside his head. That passionate look in your eye when you talked about things you loved stays fresh in his memory too. The comforting way you made him feel when he was feeling down or when life got tough sticks with him very hard. None of those feelings disappear just because the two of you are not actively talking. In fact, sometimes those memories stick around even more strongly because there are no immediate distractions around him. Your physical absence becomes a constant daily reminder of your true presence. Your silence begins to speak much louder than any regular words ever could. I am going to be completely honest with you here. Men can be very stubborn individuals. They do not always admit what they are truly feeling deep down. They do not always express their emotions clearly, and they certainly do not always act on their thoughts the second they have them. But that does not mean your absence causes him to forget about you. On the contrary, space gives him the opportunity to realize that you are not just anybody to him. You are not just a temporary thought, and you are not someone he can easily move past. You are someone who made a lasting impression, someone who truly mattered, and someone who continues to matter today. As the days go by, even if he shows no outward sign and does not pick up the phone to call, he is still thinking, he is replaying the past, processing his emotions, and evaluating his feelings. Trust me when I say that this mental processing counts for much more than you currently realize. Ladies, I want you to remember this simple truth forever. Never confuse silence with a total lack of interest, and never confuse temporary absence with completely forgetting. Men process their experiences differently than women, and they hold on to memories in their own way. What truly stays stuck in a man's mind is the overall feeling, the underlying connection, and the specific way you made him feel about himself and his life. Those vital things do not fade just because the phone remains quiet. Those deep feelings do not vanish simply because of physical distance. When a man genuinely values who you are, even total absence cannot erase the powerful imprint you left on his heart and mind. So the very next time you find yourself feeling worried because he hasn't called, or questioning whether he is still thinking about you, remember this absolute truth. He definitely is. He might not reach out to you immediately today. He might not send a quick text message, post anything online, or show his feelings on social media platforms, but none of that changes the reality. Your overall impact, your personal energy, and your shared memories remain completely alive in his mind, growing stronger even when you are not physically around. That is the absolute truth about absence and memory. Do not doubt it for a second and do not stress yourself out over it. Just sit back peacefully, continue being your authentic self, and know with full confidence that even in total silence and distance, you are still present loud and clear inside his mind every single day. Ladies and gentlemen, let me break this down further because this is the exact point where most people get things completely mixed up. You assume a man forgets about you simply because you are not standing right in front of him every day. But what really sticks with a man long term is the deep emotional imprint that you leave behind. That emotional imprint is what matters most. You see, men are naturally built to remember core feelings, meaningful moments, and strong experiences much more than they remember specific casual words. That unique energy, that positive vibe, and the exact way you made him feel inside creates a lasting mark on his mind. Once that mark is created, it does not just fade away into nothing. It stays put. It lingers in the background of his daily life, and sometimes it actually grows much stronger as time passes by. Now, ladies, listen closely to this point. Creating a real emotional imprint is not about making massive grand gestures. It is not about taking him out to expensive dinners or buying flashy, costly gifts. It is always about the simple little things. It is the genuine way you laughed at his silly jokes, even when they were not actually that funny. It is the special way you looked at him that made him feel like the only man in the room. It is the quiet way you truly listened when he had nothing specific to say, but just needed a comforting presence nearby. That is the exact material that gets deeply lodged inside a man's memory. That is what causes him to picture your face when you are not even anywhere around. The most interesting part is that he might not even consciously realize he is thinking about you until it suddenly hits him out of nowhere. He could be driving his car, taking a simple walk, or just resting on his couch after a long day, when suddenly he recalls that one quiet evening where you both talked about nothing important, yet it meant everything to him. That is your emotional imprint actively working inside his head. Women often tend to underestimate the immense power of their own quiet presence. They think they must constantly keep talking, keep sending text messages, or keep pursuing him just to stay relevant in his mind. But the absolute truth is that constant words and non-stop attention are not what make a man remember you deeply. It is always about how you made him feel while you were together. It is the genuine joy, the fun excitement, the peaceful comfort, the warm safety, and the special spark you shared. That is the memorable stuff that truly stays. You permanently enter a man's mind when you leave a genuine impression on his heart. Let me assure you, a truly deep heart impression is completely unforgettable. Let us be entirely real about how men work. They may not always express themselves in the precise ways we want them to. They might not write emotional poetry, send sweet morning messages, or tell you every single day how much you mean to them, but that never means your overall impact is not real or active. That emotional imprint is constantly working behind the scenes. It remains in his thoughts when he first wakes up in the morning. It stays in his subconscious mind while he sleeps at night. It appears during those quiet moments when he thinks he is totally alone. He spends that time reflecting, processing his life, and trying to make complete sense of why he feels such a strong, continuous pull toward you. And the best part is that you did not have to do anything fake, dramatic, or over the top for this to happen. That is the true beauty of a real emotional imprint. It is subtle, natural, and incredibly powerful, continuing to linger long after you have stepped away. Here is another crucial concept that you must understand. A man can go several weeks, multiple months, or even years without direct contact, yet that emotional imprint will not vanish. It functions just like planting a high-quality seed in rich soil. You might not water it every single day, and you might not actively talk about it to others, but that seed continues to take root and grow inside his mind. It grows steadily stronger whenever he remembers the tiny specific details about you. He remembers how easily you made him laugh, how you challenged him to be a better person, how you inspired his goals, and how you made him feel like he genuinely mattered as a person. The longer he sits alone with those positive memories, the more they naturally become an integral part of who he is. He eventually starts comparing every new person he meets to that strong internal benchmark that you established. No matter what new activities he tries or who he interacts with, that special memory, that distinct energy, and that lingering presence of yours remains right there with him. It stays with him every step of the way, even if you have no idea that it is happening behind the scenes. Now, let me share a final thought about the importance of timing. An emotional imprint always works best when you allow it to have proper space. I am not talking about ignoring someone out of spite or playing childish mind games. I simply mean allowing a man the necessary time to process his feelings, giving him room to reflect on the past, and letting that powerful seed grow naturally within his mind over time. Because when he is forced to face the clear reality that he can no longer access that vibrant energy, that loving presence, and that deep connection, it hits him much harder than anything else ever could in life. He begins to fully realize just how huge of an impact you truly had on him, just how much you genuinely meant to his world, and just how deeply he misses you, without ever having to say those words out loud to anyone. That is the true power of emotional imprint in active motion. That is precisely why it carries such an unbelievable force within a person. That is why a man can sit and think about you constantly for days on end without ever picking up his phone to make contact with you. That is why you remain firmly planted in his thoughts even when you are nowhere near his physical space. Ladies, I want you to listen to this message very clearly right now. You never need to chase after any man. You do not need to beg for basic attention or love. You do not need to constantly push to remind him of your incredible value. Your quiet presence, your natural energy, and your unforgettable emotional imprint will do all that hard work entirely for you. You have already left your permanent mark on his heart, and it is staying right there whether he feels comfortable admitting it to you or not. And when he eventually comes to terms with that truth, when he finally recognizes the true power of what he once held in his hands, that is the exact moment when the magic truly happens. That is the exact moment when he finds himself completely unable to stop thinking about your face and your spirit. That is when he genuinely understands the vast value of everything you brought into his daily life. And trust me on this, that sudden deep understanding hits a man much harder than anything else possibly could. So always remember this fundamental truth, ladies. Your emotional imprint is your ultimate secret weapon. It represents the quiet power of who you naturally are as a person, how deeply you make a man feel inside, and the beautiful memories you leave behind in your path. It operates very quietly and very silently, but with an unbelievable amount of dynamic force. Even during times of total physical absence, that mark remains fully intact. Even when you foolishly assume that he has completely moved on with his life, it is still right there. Even when he refuses to show any outward sign to the world, it stays firmly in place. And that, my friends, is the absolute truth about how emotional imprints function. It is how your natural presence, your personal energy, and your shared memories continue to live on inside a man's mind, actively shaping his deepest thoughts, his underlying feelings, and his future actions long after you have physically stepped away from his life. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something important today that far too many people completely fail to understand. You assume that just because a man is not actively texting your phone, making direct calls, sliding into your private message inbox, or reaching out to you on various social media apps, he must not be thinking about you at all. Oh no. That is precisely where most women get the entire picture completely twisted in their minds. Men simply do not always communicate their inner world the exact same way women do. They do not always possess the ability or desire to put their deepest feelings into simple words. Sometimes their constant thoughts about you manifest in subtle daily ways that you might not even notice at first glance. Those subtle clues are what we call behavioral signals. They are those small, observable signs, those sudden shifts in habit, and those minor actions that tell you loud and clear that you are heavily on his mind, even if he is not making the choice to reach out directly to you. You see, ladies, men are deeply habitual creatures of routine. They operate under consistent behavioral patterns. Even when you assume he has totally moved on or completely checked out, those tiny daily habits will inevitably reveal what is happening inside his brain. Perhaps he suddenly becomes unusually active in digital spaces where he previously was never present. He might be quietly checking up on your personal social media profiles, dropping subtle likes on your recent picture posts, or casually bringing up small details you mentioned weeks ago in a passing conversation. None of that is just a random coincidence. That is his active mind constantly circling back to your memory. That is his brain replaying the sweet moments you shared together and making sure he never forgets the massive impact you made on his life. It is very subtle in nature, but it carries immense power. You simply have to train your eyes to know exactly what to look for. It is not always about modern technology either. Sometimes these behavioral signals are even quieter and far more subtle in real life. Maybe he starts casually bringing up specific topics or hobbies that he knows you care deeply about whenever he happens to be around other people. Maybe he accidentally drops your absolute favorite subjects into general conversation without even consciously realizing that he is doing it. Maybe he frequently talks about random everyday things that instantly trigger memories of you. Those tiny behavioral clues, ladies, represent his mind working serious overtime in the background. He may not pick up the phone to call you, and he may not send a quick text message, but he is constantly thinking, reflecting, and internalizing your impact. He is actively keeping your spirit alive within his private thoughts without ever needing to speak a single word about it. Another massive signal is the unique way men act when they are spending time around mutual friends or moving through shared public spaces. Have you ever noticed how his entire face visibly lights up the second your name gets brought up in a room, or how he suddenly remembers a funny joke you made many months ago? That is not just some random act of memory. That is a vivid mental snapshot, a powerful emotional flashback, and a direct signal telling you that your memory is still exceptionally vibrant within his heart. Women naturally look for outward signs of constant direct attention to feel secure, but men display their inner world quite differently. They show their true feelings through their subtle actions, through tiny daily details, and through the distinct way they carry themselves whenever memories of you enter the picture. That is a true behavioral signal. It is easily one of the most honest signs you could ever look for because it is entirely instinctive and usually happens on a completely unconscious level. Now let us address the critical element of timing. Men will very often think about you at highly specific moments during their day, especially when they are sitting all alone or engaging in activities that naturally remind them of your personality.